You should have listened, Eivor. I tried to tell you. The gods are real, and their power is within our grasp. Fulke, circa 873. Hello, I'm Andrew, and I want to welcome you to Visions of the Past, a podcast all about the lore of Assassin's Creed. This is episode 86, and today we're going to talk about the paladin known as Fulke. Voiced by Gaia Weiss, Fulke is a major character within Assassin's Creed Valhalla, and one of a few of reoccurring foils for Eivor Varinsdottir. It's because of her major role within Assassin's Creed Valhalla that we are discussing the character and her history today. Born in Bruges within the country of Flanders, now part of Belgium, to a fishwife, Fulke dreamed of adventure. Teaching herself to read at an early age, she read anything that she could get her hands on, which led her to learn many things early in life that most people never learned within their lives. Within this knowledge, she came across information on the Isu, as well as their relics, a knowledge she followed with vigor. Hunting down information on the Isu put her on the radar of the Order of the Ancients, and it wasn't long until they offered her a place within their organization. Quickly, she rose to the rank of Magister, though she used the title of Paladin for unknown personal reasons. By 873, Fulke was being held at St. Alb's Abbey in Oxenfordshire by Lady Eadwine. Rescued from the abbey's crypt by Eivor Varinsdottir, Fulke led Eivor, along with Sigurd Striborn's and Basim ibn Ishak, to a farm nearby and told them of the Saga Stone that was brought to England by Ragnar Lothbrok. After an argument broke out between Sigurd and Eivor, Fulke promised that the stone would lead to Sigurd's true nature as a god, and then promised that the stone was being held by one of her acolytes. Reluctantly, Eivor escorted Fulke to Evinghow Tower, finding that it had been ransacked. Fulke's acolyte was found dead, and she figured that Lady Eadwine had taken the Saga Stone. Lady Eadwine surrounded the tower and offered a deal, the stone for Thane Giedric's head. Sigurd accepted, but Eivor rejected the offer and started a fight. After the fight, Eivor reminded Sigurd of their oath to Giedric, and Sigurd replied that he had no intention of failing his word to Giedric, and that Eivor needed to trust his judgment and keep her emotions in check. After this argument, Sigurd and Basim left, and Eivor asked Fulke to help her cripple Eadwine's supply lines. Agreeing, Fulke went to Eaton Barn and tried to get a merchant to give her a line of credit so Eadwine's army couldn't have the supplies. She failed, but when Eivor showed up and she told the merchant a story that he thought was a curse, he ran off, leaving his wares. Fulke then convinced Eivor to use the carts of oil to ambush soldiers that the merchant had said was coming. After the ambush, Fulke asked Eivor if she felt that Sigurd was descended from the Isu. After denying the idea, even the idea that Sigurd's family line could have started with the Isu, they agreed to regroup with Giedric. After Fulke arrived, Giedric's army was about to attack Lady Eadwine at Sinebell Castle. After the assault, Fulke, Sigurd, Basim, and Eivor made their way to Lady Eadwine, and after her defeat, the four went inside the monastery where the Saga Stone was being held. While Sigurd could understand some of the stone, he didn't have long enough to look at it before King Alfred of Wessex arrived with an army at his back that was too large for the army that attacked the castle. Sigurd decided that a parley was the best way to get out of the castle alive, and during the parley, Fulke interrupted and convinced King Alfred to take Sigurd instead of Basim for the proposed prisoner exchange. Even though she was seen as a traitor by Eivor and Sigurd, all involved agreed to the exchange, and King Alfred left Sigurd in the hands of Fulke. On the way to Kent, Fulke sent a letter to Eivor and Ravensthorpe, admitting that Sigurd had been left in his care. On the way to Kent, Fulke left a letter to Eivor and Ravensthorpe, admitting that Sigurd had been left in her care, and that she was a member of the Order of the Ancients that Basim and Hytham were hunting down, and signed it with her nickname within the Order, the Instrument. While it's unclear how long Fulke spent trying to get Sigurd to see exactly what he was, we do know a lot of this time was spent in Canterbury. Once Eivor and Basim convinced an abbot by the name of Signbert to help find her, she had him killed, and met Eivor and Basim in St. Hadrian's Priory. Here, she intended to kill the two and have their bodies delivered to her in Canterbury. While Eivor and Basim were able to escape, what they found in Canterbury shook Eivor to the core. In the dungeons of the cathedral, Eivor found a bloody chair that was only fit for torturing, and on this chair was a chest. Inside the chest was the right lower arm and hand of Sigurd. After escaping Eivor in Canterbury, Fulke fled to Portchester in Sussex. Held up within Portchester Castle, Fulke held Sigurd until Eivor showed up and offered her a chance to save her men. Refusing her, Fulke told Eivor to come get Sigurd if she could, and that she would be waiting with him, and with glee in her eyes, told Eivor she only needed to follow his screams. Eivor and her allies then laid siege to the castle. Eventually entering the castle's keep, Eivor found another bloody chair. When Eivor looked out of the room that she was standing in, she saw Fulke on her way to a church. When Eivor reached the church with Basim, they found Sigurd on the floor, bleeding, with Fulke standing over him. Before Fulke left through a secret hatch, she told Eivor that she had done all that she could for him, and that the rest was up to Eivor. Basim stayed with Sigurd, while Eivor chased Fulke through the church's catacombs. When Eivor caught up with Fulke, she ignored everything that Fulke said, choosing instead to kill her. Just before Eivor could kill her, though, Fulke confirmed that Sigurd was indeed Isu reborn, and that was all they could be hoped for. Eivor dismissed her as being mind-sick just before Fulke dropped a smoke bomb and left the catacombs. Fulke found herself surrounded by Eivor's men when she left the catacombs, followed shortly by Eivor, who told the men not to touch her. Seeing that there was no escape, Fulke claimed victory from the time that she had spent with Sigurd, and that she opened his mind to the truth of what he was. Before Eivor attacked, Fulke pulled across from the ground, determined that if she were to die, that Eivor would as well. This was Fulke's last fight, though, as Eivor was finally able to put her to rest. Fulke is an interesting character because, on the surface, what we see is that she knows a lot of information about the Isu, who they were, what their writing looks like, and even that they could be reborn. But to someone like Eivor, who doesn't believe that the Isu are real, they come off as ravings of a lunatic. But if you dig deeper into her story from the letters that we find that bear her name, or what we're told about her in her database entry, she really is a complex character. There's a letter found within the Temple of Mithras in Winchester stating that she knew that the poor fellow soldier was working with King Alfred to bring down the order, and that Alfred, even though he was the Grand Magister of the order, needed to be killed. Though we don't know exactly when this letter was written, it seems that it was written sometime around 873 based on the estimated time of the story arc where the letters from the Goodfellow soldier start appearing and the arc of her death. Another interesting thing that I want to point out is the memory corridor sequence at her death. I assume that these sequences happen within Eivor's mind, and the animus just gives him form, which is why Odin is able to interact physically with Eivor, as well as communicate with her. In Fulke's, Odin speaks to Eivor about how she is misunderstanding what Fulke's been doing, stating that she saved Sigurd from his fate as a mere human. Throughout the sequence, Eivor is upset about the pain that Fulke caused Sigurd, though Fulke argued that it was necessary to unlock his potential. It's this interaction that gives me a different outlook on the sages within Assassin's Creed. Sigurd is the reincarnation of Tyr, which, while it did start before Fulke took his arm, it didn't really express itself until after his arm was taken. Eivor clearly didn't have any issues with being the reincarnation of Odin before she was bitten by the wolf while fleeing the destruction of her village. It makes me wonder what the trauma was for Basim or the other Aesir sages, and if Aida's sages had a specific kind of trauma that triggered his DNA as well. Fulke, outside of her knowledge of the Isu, is a little bit on the sadistic side. She acted like she enjoyed the pain that she was causing Sigurd, and it seemed to me at least that the joy that she was getting out of the pain was for the pain itself and not for unlocking his potential. But what do you think about Fulke? Let me know on Twitter at visions_AC. Thank you for joining me today. Be sure to tune in every Tuesday for new episodes. If you love stories about Assassin's Creed lore, please follow this podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your favorite podcasting platform, and tell your friends about this podcast. If you have any questions about Assassin's Creed or topics you'd like me to cover, please feel free to hit me up on Twitter and Instagram at visions_AC, and you can find those links in the show notes below. Until next time, my assassin friends, make sure to follow the Creed, and to those Templars listening, may the Father of Understanding guide you.